If you have ever had a friend who could go months without talking to you and then send one message that somehow addressed exactly what you were going through at that moment, there is a decent chance that friend is an INFJ. And if you have also noticed that the same friend can be incredibly warm and deeply present one moment, then suddenly very hard to reach for weeks at a time, with no explanation and no apparent reason, yes, that also tracks. INFJs have one of the most interesting and genuinely complicated relationships with friendship of any personality type, and long-distance friendships in particular bring out both the very best and the most frustrating parts of how they connect with people. Today I want to break that down honestly, because I think it explains a lot about a type of person that most people find confusing until suddenly they do not. Let me start with what makes INFJs unusual in friendships generally before we even get to the long-distance part. INFJ stands for introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. It is one of 16 types in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Framework, and it is considered the rarest type in the world. INFJs combine deep introversion with a genuinely powerful capacity for empathy, which means they are introverted people who care enormously about other people. That combination sounds contradictory, and in practice it creates a very specific friendship style that does not fit neatly into the usual categories. An INFJ is not the friend who shows up everywhere and knows everyone. They are the friend who knows you really knows you, in a way that sometimes feels almost unsettling because they picked up on things you never directly told them. They observe, they listen between the lines, they remember details, and they connect dots in ways that feel almost intuitive. When an INFJ decides you are someone worth investing in, the quality of that attention and care is something most people have never experienced from anyone else. But here's the other side of it. Because INFJs give so much in their close relationships, and because social interaction genuinely drains their energy rather than refilling it, they are extremely selective about who receives that level of investment. The average INFJ does not have a large friend group. They have a very small number of people they consider truly close, and a much larger number of people they are friendly with but not genuinely close to. The difference between those two categories is enormous for an INFJ, even if it is invisible to the people around them. Someone can know an INFJ for years and feel like they have a close friendship, while the INFJ privately considers that person an acquaintance they enjoy, but would not call at 2 in the morning. That is not cruelty or deception. It is just that the INFJ's definition of a real friendship involves a level of depth, trust, and mutual understanding that most casual connections never reach. Now, why are INFJs specifically interesting when it comes to long-distance friendships? Because the structure of a long-distance friendship, the way it requires emotional depth rather than physical proximity, the way it depends on intentional communication rather than habitual togetherness, actually maps almost perfectly onto how INFJs naturally connect. An INFJ does not bond by just being around someone a lot. They bond through meaningful conversation, shared vulnerability, mutual honesty, and the gradual process of really understanding who a person is. None of that requires being in the same room. In fact, for some INFJs, the slight distance created by communicating through messages or calls can actually feel more comfortable than constant in-person interaction because it gives them more control over their energy output and more time to think before they respond. The empathy that INFJs carry is one of their greatest assets in long-distance friendships. When a friend is going through something difficult and is not able to be physically comforted, an INFJ is often the person who knows exactly what to say. Not because they rehearsed it or looked it up, but because they genuinely tune in to where that person is emotionally and respond from that understanding. An INFJ can read the tone behind a text message, sense when someone is saying they're fine but meaning something very different, and offer exactly the kind of acknowledgement that makes the other person feel truly seen. That skill does not require physical presence. It works through screens and across time zones just as well as it does face-to-face, which is one reason why many INFJs maintain some of their closest friendships with people they rarely or never see in person. However, and this is where the worst part comes in, INFJs struggle significantly with consistency. This is not about caring less. It is about energy management and a tendency toward all-or-nothing engagement. When an INFJ is emotionally available, they can send a long, thoughtful message that reads like a handwritten letter. They check in genuinely, they remember what their friend mentioned 3 weeks ago, they follow up. But when they are overwhelmed, overstimulated, going through a depressive episode, or simply running low on emotional capacity, they go quiet. Not cold, just quiet. And because they know their response will not be genuine or adequate when they are depleted, they sometimes wait until they feel capable of showing up properly. The problem is that this waiting can stretch from a few days into weeks, and the friend on the other end often has no idea what happened or whether they did something wrong. This is one of the places where perfectionism quietly causes damage in INFJ friendships. The INFJ holds themselves to a high standard of how they want to show up for the people they care about. They do not want to send a shallow or rushed response to someone they genuinely love. They want to give a reply that is real, considered, and worth reading. And so sometimes they do not reply at all because the right reply is not ready yet. From the outside, this looks like ignoring someone. From the inside, it is actually a form of respect taken too far. The intention is good. The outcome is confusing and sometimes hurtful, especially for friends who interpret silence as distance or disinterest. Trust is the absolute foundation of any INFJ friendship, and in a long-distance context, this becomes even more important. When an INFJ cannot see someone regularly, cannot read their body language, cannot be physically present to observe who they are in daily life, they rely heavily on consistency and honesty to feel secure in the connection. If a long-distance friend is someone who says one thing and does another, who is warm in messages but unreliable in practice, or who seems to present a different version of themselves depending on the audience, the INFJ will notice, and they will pull back. Not dramatically, just gradually, quietly, in the way that INFJs tend to exit things they no longer feel safe in. They do not usually confront. They just become less available, and eventually the friendship fades from their end with very little explanation. On the flip side, when an INFJ does trust a long-distance friend deeply, the signs are very specific. They reach out first, which is significant because INFJs do not initiate contact casually. They share things they do not share with most people, thoughts they have not fully formed yet, fears they have not said out loud to anyone else, the real version of how they are doing rather than the acceptable version. They remember the details of your life and bring them up later in ways that show they were genuinely paying attention. And they stay. Even if months pass between conversations, even if life gets complicated and communication becomes irregular, an INFJ who has decided that you matter will find their way back to you. That kind of loyalty, operating quietly in the background regardless of time or distance, is one of the rarest things a person can have in a friendship. For any INFJ who struggles with maintaining long-distance friendships, a few things genuinely help. Letting go of the idea that every message needs to be meaningful and complete is a big one. Sometimes a short check-in, just a few words, an image, something that says "I thought of you," is more valuable than a perfectly crafted message sent 3 weeks too late. Being honest with close friends about how you work is also important. Telling someone that you sometimes go quiet when you are overwhelmed and that it is never about them removes so much unnecessary confusion and hurt. And being intentional about scheduling some form of regular contact, even just once a month, gives the friendship a rhythm that does not depend entirely on either person having a spontaneous burst of energy and availability at the same time. For anyone who has an INFJ friend and sometimes wonders where they went, they did not leave. They're just refilling. And when they come back, they will show up with everything they have. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, subscribe to help me hit my 2,000 video goal. This is my unfiltered diary of solo living in the Philippines, from the tough days in the ESL classroom to my journey learning Japanese and Korean. Yes, I'm still a beginner. If you'd like to support my work and my retirement fund, check out the buy a treat for my pets link in the description. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update. Thanks for being part of the journey.
See you then.